Hey everybody, welcome to the Dad Challenge podcast. My name is Josh. Thanks for joining me today. We're talking about the JP Miller case. It's something we have covered on this channel in the past, more of a real crime, hashtag real crime thing that we do here in the Dad Challenge podcast. It doesn't really talk about, it's not really child exploitation, so it's a different case, but there's something we talked about, and a lot of this has been brought to my attention recently, that the woman that he was seen with after his wife unalived herself, he's now married to her, and this case is a little bit weird, so we're going to explore it a little bit. We're going to put our tinfoil hat on, we're going to explore the intricacies of what this could be, and why I don't think things like this can be coincidence, because if it is, holy smokes. Let's get to it. Okay, so someone sent me this video from, what's her name? Married to a Lunatic. And I got sent it like 100 times. So let's watch this.
Congratulations, guys!
Why is the marriage between this man and woman the scariest thing we've witnessed in a while? Because not only were these two both married to other people when they were both caught having an affair, both of their spouses are no longer alive. That groom is none other than JP Miller, Micah Miller's husband. And just 4 days after Micah was found with what they believe
he's got too many teeth, you know?
Was self-inflicted wounds that ended her life, her husband was spotted out with this woman. Meet Susie Skinner, whose husband Chris passed away 1 week after confronting JP about the affair JP was having with his wife Susie.
And rehear that. He passed away 1 week after discovering about the affair between Skinner and Miller. Miller Skinner. Sounds like a weird beer.
Chris, seen in this picture with his now 17-year-old twins and wife Susie, was a quadriplegic who lost his ability to walk at the age of 20. And after finding out about his wife's affair with Micah Miller's husband JP, drowned in a pool.
I'm really sick and tired of being sick and tired. It's been rough. It's been rough. And the only thing that's been really getting me through is my family.
That's gross. I've never seen this guy. I just started looking into this case a little bit. He was a inspirational speaker and tried to do that for his life. Took something that happened to him and turned it into something positive. And like, again, all this stuff's alleged. I don't know if they actually did discover them having an affair, but I think that was basic. That's the overall consensus what happened. So the thing is that, again, coincidence? 1 week later, this guy ends up drowned in a pool.
Fast forward to last year when Micah Miller herself was found unalived. In Micah's case, she survived long enough to make several videos explaining what a hardship she was going through in her marriage, making it sound like she quite possibly also knew about JP's affairs.
Just want to let you know that I'm alive.
I need to say this too, because yes, there are so many pastors that exist in the world right now in this type of church, not just Mormon church. And I'm not even, this is like the regular Christian church, non-denominational, Christian church, that absolutely like cheat on their spouses, like 100%. And the wives are supposed to, like, not all the time, and they shouldn't, but they're supposed to be like, well, I forgive you because forgiveness is the Lord and blah, blah, blah. There are so many women who still exist with their husbands who are pastors who cheated on them and still do, right? And they just forgave them and are still with them. What it sounds like what happened with Micah Miller, she found out everything, but she had nowhere to go. Her husband is a prolific pastor inside of this community who had lots of friends, and she didn't want to rock the boat and just had to live in her horror for a while, which I think ultimately led to her doing this to herself. I think JP Miller holds a lot of responsibility for what might happen to Micah and for her overall health, mental health, and everything else, and didn't get her help. Also probably pushed her over the edge. I think in my video I did on them, a couple videos I did on them, I think I alluded to that it sounds like he pushed her to the edge and like wanted her to do this. That's what the consensus is, I think.
Life's been kind of crazy the couple past weeks, months,
so sad.
years. But I've kind of had to keep my circle really small for the past couple weeks, just because I'm going through a lot and it's hard and it's my cross to bear.
Why am I saying affairs plural? Because Micah's husband JP wasn't just making headlines for her mysterious disappearance and then finding her not alive. He was also making headlines because 2 months before anyone even filed for divorce, he was leaving his number to waitresses on receipts.
He was,
Since this couple came forward publicly dating, they also reopened Chris's case.
But have since closed it. Now, she doesn't say that in this video because it's not salacious enough, but we're going to read the articles of what happened here. But then we're going to look into some conspiracies about what people think happened because technology.
Whether you believe Susie and JP had anything to do with their spouses no longer being here, it's going to be interesting to see which one survives this marriage.
Congrats.
I didn't hear that last part before. Well, there you go. It's going to be interesting to see who survives because 2 of these people's spouses died. So now it's like they're facing off in the finals. It's like the NHL finals. And I'm hoping that JP Miller is the Leafs, if you know what I mean. The Leafs never win, is what I'm saying. Probably married so that they could not testify against each other. I doubt that's a thing, like for crimes they committed in the past. They did it button. 25,000 likes. Why does she look like Ruby Frankie? Interesting. How very Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell of them. This is local to me, and let me tell you, everyone here knows they are guilty. We can only hope and pray that law enforcement gets a job done right to prove this. Now, again, we're going to look at the conspiracy theories of why people believe this. Now, I'm not saying I do. We're just going to look at what people are saying, okay? Is he still the pastor of this church? No, and we're going to get to that in a minute. He stepped down and closed the church and sold it. Okay. Micah Miller was murdered by a husband, and you cannot convince me otherwise. Karma's going to have a time with these two, that's for sure. I will never understand how a woman can see a man treat his former partner so poorly and still want to have a go with him. The man is not changed. He doesn't even think. Yeah. So one thing is that what's come out since the Micah Miller case is that he is an absolute piece of absolute shit. Okay, I'm going to throw a couple absolutes in there. He's a trash human being who has been accused of multiple things about being a shit ass to multiple people, okay? Breaking. And I'm going to break it down to you because he's being charged with being with a 15-year-old, okay? Pastor JP Miller and Wayne Miller accused of SA target minors in new lawsuit. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Pastor JP Miller stands, so it's this year. This kind of article doesn't have a date on it. Anyway, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Pastor JP Miller now stands formally accused of a 15-year-old female church member in 1998. So likely, what's that called? Statute of limitations has passed on that. So she's suing civilly, and of SAing her again in 2023. That's bananas. Okay, 25 years later, did it again. On Tuesday morning, attorney Randy Hood of McGowan, Hood, Felder, and Phillips law firm in Rock Hill, South Carolina, filed a complaint against Miller in Horry County Circuit Court on behalf of his client, who is identified as Jane Doe number 1. Hood spoke about the case in a TikTok video, saying, in part, in my case, Jane Doe alleges that 98 Paul Miller SA'd her at Cathedral Church while it was being run by his father, Reginald Wayne Miller. She also alleges that in 2023, he SA'd her again. This case involves complex issues involving repressed memory and not understanding what happened until much later. This is a thing when it comes to people who are SA'd. Okay? It's happened to me. You don't understand the ramifications of what happened till much later. In some people's cases, they live with shame and stuff because they don't understand the ramifications. They put blame on themselves and they don't know until later, and you realize it wasn't them. So they at the time, they didn't think there was anything wrong with it, or they didn't realize or had too much shame to come forward because it is a pastor, a person in authority, and they don't. And so statute of limitations passes and they get away with it. That is absolutely a thing when it comes to SAing. Especially when it comes to younger people. It absolutely is a thing. Allendale attorney Mark Tinsley also joined Hood as part of Jane Doe's legal team. Tinsley's work helped expose Alex Murdaugh's exploitation of the probate system. Wow. The 43-page civil filing names John Paul Miller, his father in the Church of Solid Rock Ministries, including All Nations Cathedral Church, formerly known as Cathedral Baptist Church of Grandstand. The lawsuit alleges that the Millers engaged in SA and predatory contact, often targeting minors. For nearly a year, Myrtle Beach pastor JP Miller has been at the center of an FBI investigation following the April 2024 death of his estranged wife, Micah Francis, who was found dead in North Carolina's swamp last year. While Francis' death was ruled a suicide, evidence shows a pattern of alleged abuse from JP leading up to her death. And I believe that. I think at the time we did the video, I believe that she did it, but was pushed into doing it. Which there has been cases where that has happened where I'm not sure which case it is, but a girl convinced a boy over the internet or over a phone line and texting to off himself, and he did, and she was charged. So there is precedent that you can be charged with, pushing someone into it. I'll find the case for you. The case you're referring to is likely the Michelle Carter case, also known as the texting suicide case. In 2014, Michelle Carter, then 17, was charged with involuntary manslaughter in Massachusetts for encouraging her 18-year-old boyfriend, Conrad Roy, 3, to off himself via text message and phone calls. Roy died by suicide on July 12, 2014, by carbon monoxide poisoning in his truck. Prosecutors presented evidence of over 1,000 text messages where Carter urged Roy to take his life, including telling him to get back in the truck when he hesitated as it filled with toxic fumes. Dang. A key moment was a phone call where Carter allegedly instructed Roy to return to the vehicle knowing it was deadly and failed to alert anyone to help him. Both teens struggle with depression, and Roy had a history of suicide attempts, but the prosecution argued Carter's actions were reckless and directly contributed to his death. In June 2017, Judge Lawrence found Carter guilty of involuntary manslaughter, focusing on her failure. She got 2.5 years in prison, with 15 months to be served, and the rest suspended, plus 5 years of probation. So she's out now, probably, and the case sparked free speech laws, all this kind of stuff. So there is absolutely precedent that this is thing, and there's no evidence exists that there's no text messages up that he was pushing her to do it, but that's what I believe. I honestly, without evidence and just knowing what we know about this total douchebag and knowing what we know about predatory pastors, I believe that. I believe he was like, if he's cheating on her, if he's treating her like garbage, he also groomed her as a teenager. She was the babysitter of his children before he got with her. Like, there's too much going on here that doesn't point to this guy being the most predatory asshole that exists on earth. Okay, and karma will come to get this guy. If not, hell will. For nearly a decade, Myrtle Beach pastor has been at the center of blah, blah, blah. Again, being at the center of an FBI investigation, this woman still marries this guy knowing that he's being charged with this, knowing he did these things, knowing he treated Micah this way. Like, so it sounds like she's okay with it. Do you know what I mean? Sounds like she's cool with being with somebody who's like that because she's probably like that too. You know? Trash attracts trash. For nearly a year, I keep starting that same paragraph. Micah's death inspired domestic violence awareness advocates around the world to push for coercive control laws in South Carolina. I agree with that. This is not the first time the disgraced Myrtle Beach pastor has been accused of SA. The allegations published from Micah's diaries and other evidence by Micah's attorney, Regina Ward, JP was accused of demanding Micah to have sex with him while she was hospitalized, forcing her to perform SA acts against her will and demanding that she watch him in acts while preaching on Sundays, as it was Micah's job as a woman to submit. So he forced her to perform acts against her will and demanding that she watch him in acts, all while preaching on Sunday. What? The lawsuit alleges that Jane Doe was 15 years old in 1998 when JP Miller R''d her outside of the church building at 803 Howard Avenue, former home of the Solid Rock Ministries. She also alleges that JP Miller SA'd her again when she encountered him in Myrtle Beach in 2023. That's quite the story. That's crazy. As for Reginald Wayne Miller, JP's father, Jane Doe once says in part that defendant RWM and other unnamed members of the Cathedral Solid Rock knew of JP's propensity to spend improper amounts of time alone with minors by himself or engage in SA conduct. According to multiple sources with knowledge of Jane Doe's case, there may be additional victims of SA and they're considering coming forward. Generally speaking, sexual violence cases that involve church leaders can be complex because of the nature of the abuser's spiritual roles in young church members. Yes. And the weaponization of victims' belief in God. Yes. That's why they get away with it in churches so much, because they use God. They really, really, really do. If a pastor's ever credibly accused of this and has been, tried and convicted of this, they should never enter ministry ever again. They should literally have a millstone tied around their neck and thrown into the sea. And I'm not just saying, I mean all people who hurt children, of course, but church people specifically, the most should be judged the most harshly because of what they preach about. Fear of retaliation can be one factor that helps alleged abusers keep victims silent. Other factors can include victims worry that they'll be mischaracterized in the public eye, especially inside of a church. Yes, it happens. Yes, girls get SA'd. Yes, they come forward. Yes, they get accused of being tarts and whores and everything else. Yes. It all happens. Oh, it's their fault because they wore a skirt. It's their fault because they were acting inappropriately. They were flirty. This and that. It's always the girl's fault. Always. Never the dude's fault inside of a church. Okay, and I left that, and I can see back, and I'm realizing, even though the Bible says if your eye causes you to sin, pluck that shit out, bitch. Okay, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It puts the blame on the women. Insane. Now, I'm not saying it's always a dude's fault, okay? Sometimes it happens the other way, but very rarely, okay? Okay, cool. I mean, I was a pastor for years, and I have had married women come on to me, and so it does exist in the other way, but that's not... I'm saying it's inappropriate, but it's not illegal, right? It's not a power dynamic switch, so it is a little bit different. But men who exist inside churches and in the public eye of churches and in ministry, they are approached by women like they are rock stars. It absolutely is a thing. I promise you it is, okay? So inside the church is a very, very dangerous place if you are not strong-willed. Okay, if you don't have a strong will and you don't have a strong marriage, and you know a lot of these pastors aren't home very often with their families because they're spending all their time at churches, and they have very attractive assistants and people that work at the church with them, and they're with those women more than they are with their own wives. This happens. Okay, this is why the church shouldn't overwork pastors. It's another conversation, but it's the reason why churches should encourage family and not overwork people, and they overwork everybody. Okay, every church does it. Sorry. Other factors can include victims' worry that the mischaracterizing the public eye when the complexities of what are often coercively controlled relationships with their abusers, adding to the complexity the age of victims at the time of their abuse. Any victim who was a minor at the time of their SA abuse was a child, and as children, no matter how they might have been manipulated by the abuser at the time or since the time, they did not have the ability to consent. True. Even if they did consent, they didn't have the ability legally to do so. Previous allegations. According to an affidavit signed by J.P. Miller's ex-wife, Allison Williams, J.P. Miller has been accused of SA appropriate behavior with minors in 2015. In the document signed last year, Erin Williams said in 2015 she learned about JP's inappropriate behavior with minor female members of the church, and she went to the girls and asked them to come forward. According to Williams, the girls told her what happened, but said they were too scared of JP to tell the police or to testify in court, according to the affidavit. Around that same time, those allegations came to light. JP's affair with Micah was also made known to church members, according to Allison's affidavit. So Allison, you know, JP told me in addition to his affair with Micah, he had employed prostitutes and had been inappropriate with several underage female members of the church. This guy's been accused of all this stuff as a pastor and still is getting a woman to marry him. Are you okay? Skinner, are you okay? Holy shit, what do your kids think? What do your kids think? They weren't at the wedding. That's what they think. Wow. So anyway, this goes on to just say, I just wanted to talk about that really quickly, but here's
Hello,
the
my
lawyer.
name is Randy Hood. As many of you know, I represent victims of child sexual abuse in South Carolina and other states in the United States. This morning I filed a case
Camera is shaking.
on behalf of a Jane Doe against John Paul Miller, Reginald Wayne Miller, Cathedral Church, and Solid Rock Ministries in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. John Paul Miller is also known as the former husband of Micah Miller. In my case, Jane Doe alleged that in 1998, John Paul Miller assaulted her at Cathedral Church while it was being run by his father, Reginald Wayne Miller. She also alleges that in 2023, he sexually assaulted her again. This case involves complex issues involving a repressed memory.
I'm so glad she has the courage to come forward with these two men and the people surrounding them and shoes to cover them in place. I can't even tell you guys how many times churches and the people inside the churches and the membership and the leadership teams of these churches and elders and stuff want to cover this stuff up. Like they do because, and I don't think it's, I mean, obviously it's predatory that they do it. I don't think they do it out of a predatory behavior or need to be predatory. They do it out of saving each other. But churches, anybody who's ever served on a church board who has overseen this and seen a pastor do it during their tenure, they should all step down too. It should just, even if you didn't know, step down. You weren't looking hard enough, okay? And likely they were approached by lots of people and did hear things. As soon as you hear of impropriety inside of a pastor, okay, take a look at it for sure. It might just be someone being mad, okay? But as soon as you get a bunch, it's time to start looking deeper and time to take a step back, pastor. Okay, we're gonna look into all this. Okay, and it happens so damn much. Look at Michael Tate. I did a video on him a little while ago, and now there's 10 times worse things coming forward of what he did, and video evidence of it all. Okay, so and apparently this in the CCM industry, Christian music industry, it was the biggest secret that wasn't a secret, but nobody came forward in this industry. You got Corey Asbury out there saying, yeah, everybody knew. Well, where the f are you, Corey Asbury? Where were you? Why didn't you say something then? If everybody knew, why the f didn't anybody say anything? That's the church right now. Why the f aren't people saying things? And you wonder why people don't want to go anymore. You wonder why the church is being judged on a very high scale right now. I don't think that's a mistake that you see shit like Hillsong falling, and you're going to see Elevation fall, and you're going to see all these big churches fall. I don't think in big and small, they're all falling. Okay, all of them. Biggest pastors in the world are falling. I don't think that's a mistake. I think that's God's judgment on the people. And I think that's absolutely appropriate, and we love to see it. Items removed from Solid Rock Church. John Paul Miller launches new living water ministry. So the first thing he does after leaving a church, and don't forget what he did, okay? He went on stage and he said, let's see if I can find it here. I got to find it for you because holy shit.
I'm going to have you stand up and I'm going to make an announcement. And after the announcement, I'm going to ask that you leave church quietly. And
why the hell would they have to stand up for this, first of all, you weirdo?
And don't talk about the announcement. I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. Yeah, it was self-induced.
First of all, and I think I said this when I first watched this initially, it was self-induced. He has no business doing this on from the stage, first of all. Second of all, as a pastor of a man who's supposed to be do with a wife, why are you preaching on Sunday after your wife offed herself? What do you... No, bro. You take time off. You go do what you got to do. You got to take care of your family. No, the guy's still preaching because he's got to fill that collection plate. You don't fuck... And then you tell everybody to stand up and then go out and don't tell anybody? And he's who the... He's a psychopath. I'm sorry, there's no other way to put this.
And it was up in North Carolina.
This is Pastor John Paul Miller.
That's what he said. I just wanted to remind you guys of the craziness of this asshole, okay? The absolute bonkers business of this. So then what does he do? He starts another ministry because he wants to do it. Because pastors, especially like who are registered with 501c's or whatever you call them in the US, where they're like churches, they don't have to pay taxes. They get massive tax returns on their homes and things like that, and they don't have to pay a certain amount of money for rent. They live very nicely. A lot of pastors are like, I live poorly. Okay, not anymore. Okay, that used to, maybe in the 70s and 80s and maybe even 90s I could say that. It doesn't exist like that anymore. There are so many tax breaks for pastors and clergy members, it's bananas. Okay, so if you pull in $60,000 from a church, you can write off like 10 months of your mortgage or the rent from your home. You can write off your business expenses, like, because as it is a business, the church doesn't pay any taxes. Pastors enjoy lots of free shit everywhere and less tax on certain things, and they enjoy lots of benefits. So when you make $60,000 as a pastor, you bring home almost all of that. Okay, it's a little bit different than if you weren't. So pastors aren't poor. Okay, and those pastors who are up the top echelon of pastors making millions, same way, except more. Okay, that's why they live in mass mansions, and sometimes the church owns the mansions, like Sean Foyt, the noodle-headed bastard who owns 9 homes, calls them parsonages. Okay, there's too many tax loopholes inside the church. It's time to start taxing churches. And I know a lot of people don't think that's popular. It's popular, but I know a lot of you don't want it. But I'm telling you to start taxing churches at a certain echelon of what they own, bigger property is, how much money they bring in a year. Leave the small churches, don't tax them, start taxing the big motherfuckers, because they're wasting money and they're throwing it away and they're being shitty with it. Okay, start taxing them. So anyway, so that's what he does. He starts another ministry, which I hope gets completely shut down as well. I hope no one goes to... Who the hell would go to a ministry of a guy who's a psychopath? You're crazy. I mean, sorry, I'm stupid, because so many pastors out there are psychopaths. Like, that's the way it is. You can't be sitting there preaching Jesus while taking steroids and singing songs in your wife beater and being a sex idol and like thirst trap on stage, wearing $15,000 sneakers and a sweater that costs 10 grand you're going to wear once. You cannot preach the gospel doing those things. I will stand on that till the end of time. People are like, why can't pastors be wealthy? Because they f***ing can't. Okay? You chose this life. If you want to do this, if you want to preach Jesus from the pulpit and be taken seriously, then you cannot do those things. You chose this life. Like influencers choose this life and they don't get any privacy anymore. The same thing goes with pastors who want to be pastors. No, touche pas. You cannot be a wealthy dickhole. You're not allowed to be. It's literally in the Bible. You cannot be. I mean, I'm not saying you should also live like a pauper. Like, I think you should be able to afford the vehicles and have a decent life, right? I'm not saying you should be poor, but you shouldn't be insanely wealthy. That's f***ing bullshit, okay? If you go to a church where your pastor is insanely wealthy because he's in ministry, leave the church. If he was previously wealthy, that's different. If he's wealthy on the outside for doing business, okay. But if he's wealthy because of ministry, leave that church. Okay. I know you guys have heard me say that a million times. As you look back more in this case, you start realizing that his new bride, this is the case from there.
First at 11, a News 13 exclusive. The family of a man who drowned in 2021 is speaking only to News 13 after the Horry County Coroner's Office says it now has new evidence related to his death. Thank you for joining us at 11. I'm Edward Moody.
And I'm Trish Williford. We've learned this case also has ties to Myrtle Beach pastor John Paul Miller, who's gained national attention since his wife's suicide last April.
News 13's Adriana Lawrence has followed this story closely. She joins us in the studio and tells us why the family is speaking out more than 3 years later and what led officials to take a second look. Adriana.
So the fact that they even took a second look is a big deal. Okay, even if they close it again, I don't care. The fact that they reopened it is a big deal.
Well, Trish, Edward, at the time, the coroner's office ruled 40-year-old Chris Skinner's death as an accident. The family says they never questioned what investigators found. But recent events in the last year have made not only the family raise questions, but outsiders as well.
Yep.
When the police were doing their investigations on the scene, they were told certain things. And now there's been acknowledgement that some of those things are inaccurate.
Chris Skinner, an Army veteran, was paralyzed from the neck down after a car crash when he was just 20 years old. He soon after became a motivational speaker and author. But in the morning of September 6, 2021, police reports state Skinner went to the community pool to meet someone for a game of chess. While strapped in his wheelchair, surveillance video shows he fell into the pool and was there for about 40 minutes before first responders pulled him out. The police report goes on to say the video shows him trying to pull his head up. It goes on to say Chris's wife, Susie Skinner, tried to produce a do not resuscitate form, but the form was not filled out, so Chris was taken to the hospital where he was later pronounced dead.
I need you to hear that. Really, really just... I know we're going to put the tinfoil hat on. So this woman comes to the scene with a do not resuscitate order that's not signed by her husband. What in the f***? Like, you're going to show up to the place where your husband drowned. Oh, wait, guys, wait. I have a DNR. Wait a second before you revive my husband. DNR. Right? I'm sorry. Nope.
Dashcam video News 13 obtained shows who Chris's family says is John Paul Miller and his late wife Micah with Susie at the scene.
She's got her hand up in the air, which you'll see in a second is kind of important.
According to a recent testimony in court, Susie says she's known John Paul since 2019 and is now
I wasn't even listening to that.
And his late wife pronounced dead. Dashcam video News 13 obtained shows who Chris's family says is John Paul Miller and his late wife Micah with Susie at the scene.
So John Paul Miller is at the scene of this guy's death. And then a year later, Mike is dead. And then a year later, those two are married. Like, okay, come on, man. If you believe that shit, I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. I'm just saying, there's the coincidences like this. Just the astronomical math of this is that there's just no effing way. Okay, I'm sorry. No. So JP Miller comes to the scene where her husband dies. She's there, and then a year later, his wife's gone, and then a year later, they're married. Like, okay, I'm just saying. Is that just me? No, it's not. That's why we're doing this video.
According to a recent testimony in court, Susie says she's known John Paul since 2019 and is now his girlfriend. John Paul is also being investigated by the FBI. Chris's sister, Tamara McDermott, tells us Chris attended church at Solid Rock Church, where John Paul was the pastor, and didn't have positive feelings towards him.
About 4 to 5 months prior to his passing, he did talk a lot about the pastor of that church. He did stop going to church there. He would talk openly to, me and my family, close friends of his, and others about, why he was distancing himself from the church.
McDermott couldn't say why Chris had those feelings, but a 2024 affidavit filed by John Paul's ex-wife, Allison Williams, states John Paul began a sexual relationship with another woman whose husband later drowned.
Well, coincidence? So this time he's sleeping with her. And then his wife dies. This guy, man. How the heck does he show his face in public?
It goes on to say the woman's husband confronted John Paul 2 weeks prior to his drowning. McDermott says Chris...
Right? You're all doing the same thing I'm doing, like, right? As he looks at the camera, right? Something's up.
Funeral was held at John Paul's church, Solid Rock. She adds, following Micah's death, many people began to question what really happened to Chris.
And that caused, frequent speculation all over media sources, social media sources, and that caused just people to put a lot of phone calls into the Myrtle Beach police, the coroner, on a regular reoccurring basis.
They didn't do a thing. They do an autopsy either. They didn't do one. Convenient, that.
What people began to question was what McDermott calls inconsistent information. In police reports News 13 obtained, it states his wheelchair was seen moving towards the pool and falls in. But the coroner's report states Chris appears to have gotten too close to the pool edge, causing the wheel to slip and then fall in. The coroner's report also states an autopsy wasn't done, statements were not taken, and nothing was filed under witnesses or from the death scene.
No statements, no witnesses, nothing? That's convenient too, right?
Of course, if the coroner has made a decision to reopen investigation, and of course her release statement, you know, I believe that there is means to say that it was going to be potentially something other than an accident.
So that's something that's being looked into, an alternative than an accident, at least being looked into.
Yes, correct.
Now we've reached out to the coroner's office to ask.
Okay, they're not going to get any answers from the coroner's office. So that is what's going on. So this is another thing on Fundy Snark Uncensored. Micah, JP Miller's, Susie Skinner getting married right now in Myrtle Beach. And that video is like crazy. It's just people just show up to it. JP Miller and Susie Skinner married today while both of their spouses' deaths remain under investigation. Chris Skinner, a paralyzed veteran, drowned. JP's wife died in April 24, ruled a suicide. Both cases have drawn federal attention, and they also had security there, and everybody's just on edge. If you look at this scene, look at everybody's, they're just on a swivel. Everybody's looking for cameras and who's here, who's there. Nobody's enjoying themselves. Who the hell would support this guy? Holy look at everybody. Look.
Aww,
who are you?
How sweet. Congratulations, guys.
Yeah, they're like, they don't want you to be there. This guy's filming, everybody's filming.
Aww.
You just scavenge, you just mongrels. These two are mongrels. Who does that? Who does this? She knows who he is. Her kids know who he is. If it's true what he did to that 15-year-old girl, holy crap. Why would you marry this guy and put your kids inside of this guy's world? What the is wrong with you, Heidi? Is that her name?
Cute.
Susie, sorry. No, I'm not sorry I got your name wrong. F off. Look at everybody's just looking around. Nobody's really, they're just... People, I don't know why people would go to this. That woman has no teeth. And they're wearing Crocs.
Who? No, I love love. I love love too. I do too.
I love love. No, you don't. Is this love? This looks like murder to me. I'm sorry, allegedly. I'm sorry, what? I read JP Miller and almost fell off my chair. Justice for Micah Miller. She did not delete herself. Look up her case. May she rest peacefully and justice be served. Justice for Micah Francis and Chris Skinner. 7 kids between the two and not one showed up. That should tell you everything you need to know. Wait, Micah Miller? Like the preacher's ex? Oh my god, I forgot about this case. Just remember Lori and Chad got caught in the end. Who are all these people around them? Yeah, seriously. Well, let's see who survives this marriage and popcorn bucket. Oh my gosh. So that, just look at everybody's heads are on a swivel and everything else, right? Quick rundown. Susie and Chris Skinner were a married couple who joined Pastor John Miller's church in South Carolina some years ago. Susie and John began having an affair at some point, September 2021. Chris Skinner, who was paralyzed from the waist down, drowned after falling into a community pool. But I was reading some of these comments. He started grooming Micah at 14 as her pastor, and she used to babysit his kids from his first marriage before she married him. Whew. Is this the case where the first wife was actually worried for Micah after they got married and tried to keep in contact with her to make sure she wasn't harming her? That's the one. I want to talk to JP Miller's ex-wife. I would love to have a conversation with her on the show. Nothing says I love Jesus like murdering your spouse so you can be together. So America. Oh damn, I didn't know her husband died too. This scenario is giving Lori value. Chad Daybell. I think he was in a wheelchair and ended up in a pool, which is weird. Susie held a fundraiser for that chair. It could be operated by Bluetooth. Gee, I wonder why she wanted it so badly. So this is the tinfoil hat conspiracy. If this chair could be operated by Bluetooth, and you look at the footage, I have not seen the footage, I'm not sure it's been released, but he looks surprised that he was falling in the pool and then put his head up of the water to try to save himself. It means that I don't think he was trying to off himself, and it doesn't look like an accident. So what is the alternative answer? Again, coincidences be taken out. If that chair could be operated by Bluetooth, I mean, it can't be. You probably have to be pretty close to it. I'm just saying it's out there. I'm not saying it is the way it is, but I'm just saying they reopened the investigation. Okay, they didn't have any witnesses, didn't take any statements, nothing. And now, there's just Occam's razor says this: J.P. Miller was having an affair with Susie. Okay, Susie's husband confronts J.P. Miller. 2 weeks later, he ends up dead. Okay? 1 year later, Micah Miller's dead. 1 year later, they get married. What else do you need? What else do you need? Okay, I'm just sorry that doesn't work that way without there being some nefarious bullshit going on. I'm sorry. Okay? Weird. FYI, the family is asked to call her Micah Francis. My bad, Micah Francis. She was trying to reclaim her maiden name before she died. That sucks. I've been wondering what's been going on in this case. So that was one of the things I read, was that if the chair is controlled by Bluetooth, maybe, like, I don't know how you can prove anything. If that's the case, if the chair fell in or if he fell out of the chair into the pool and someone was operating Bluetooth to do it, there's no way you can prove that. There just isn't. There will be no evidence of that happening. And then this case on Myrtle Beach, J.P. Miller's been released from Solid Rock Church and the church website no longer accessible, and they sold the property. And this is his third wife, by the way, and like, after all that has happened, maybe don't. A video's worth 1,000 words. John Paul Miller, Micah Miller unseen after Chris Skinner dies. We saw that. Susie raises hands same way at wedding as when husband died. I know it's probably not, but I'm just, oh my gosh. Look at that again. Raises her hand up. Raises her hand up. Ew, how do you show your face in public with this dickhole? How? Wow, the chemistry between them is electric, like a toaster in a bathtub. Those toes are horrendous. Wait, her husband died too? Yep. Sorry, who are these people? Disgraced pastor John Paul Miller and longtime girlfriend Susie Skinner. Now, if that church does emerge and he becomes a pastor of the church, you should be out there protesting every single Sunday. Absolutely. What are these shoes? We all knew this, but no one would listen. No, we're all listening. What's so odd about this is she calls her pastor and her friend pastor's wife. Yeah, why would she call him and the wife? Anyway, so I just want to say that's the case in the update on this whole thing, and that karma is going to come for this dickhole, and it should. And don't ever, if you go to his church, are you okay? Are you stupid? Don't. Okay, also, if you put in the timeline of events of what happened, there's just no way that this coincidence could be a thing, and it needs to be looked into more, and karma does need to come for J.P. Miller. Like 100%. I don't care what anybody says. 100% karma needs to come for J.P. Miller. It's insane that they got away with this. Now, I'm not saying that they offed their spouses. I'm just saying this should never have been a union, ever. Why are your kids not there? Why do you need security? Why do you have to live your life like that? Right? There's some weird shit. Even take away the murder things, even him cheating on her and then her marrying him after both spouses dies. Like, just don't. The optics, you know? Holy shit. Anyway, everybody take a deep breath. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you and these #real crime events that we're looking into, because I think it's really important and they're really interesting, these types of cases. We should look into more of these things and we should keep an eye on this. Let me know if you see anything more on this. My gut is telling me that J.P. Miller is going to end up in prison someday. Hopefully. We can only hope. Or other karma, like getting eaten by an alligator, crocodile, whichever lives in Florida. Okay? Or Myrtle Beach. Do they live in Myrtle Beach? Anyway. Thanks for being here, guys. I appreciate you. Don't forget, someone has a huge crush on you, okay? You just don't know it yet. And I'll see you when I see you.